Today's topic is From Ballot Box to the Podium, Mobilizing Immigrant Voters and New Leadership. Whether as voters, organizers, or as political leaders, immigrants represent a powerful and growing political constituency. How do smart cities bring these new voices into the mainstream? How do we go about getting diverse leadership and new ideas to the decision table? In the next hour, we will learn about successful strategies from Toronto and from Boston that are promoting the political participation of immigrant communities and winning immigrant votes. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker from Toronto, Alejandra Bravo. Alejandra is the Manager of Leadership Programs at Maitrey, where she leads the School for Civics program. Hi, Alejandra. Welcome to the Learning Exchange. The podium is yours.
Thank you very much, Kim. In 2007, we knew that elections at various levels of government were coming, and that this would represent an opportunity for new political actors to emerge. We recognized as well an opportunity for us to enrich the political process by infusing the elections with a new, diverse generation of leaders, already making an impact in society, but not really politically connected. So we sought to demystify election campaigns, and to some degree the reality of electoral politics, for leaders from underrepresented ethnic and racial groups. In the process, we'd equip them to run for elected office or work behind the scenes in election campaigns. Why? Demographic change in urban centers fueled by migration is a major social force around the world. In our own region, we'll be a majority minority city by 2031. So more than ever, improving the economic, social, civic integration of newcomers is vital to our city region. In our work, immigrant, neighborhood, and city prosperity go hand in hand. And leadership is part of integration and inclusion. It matters who's within the corridors of power, because only those who are able to lead organizations, to lead institutions, and to make decisions are truly able to shape their future. Leaders signal who belongs and who doesn't. They provide role models. They're powerful symbols for future generations of what they can and cannot aspire to become. Political leadership is particularly visible, and we know there's a gap. We've counted senior leadership in our city region as part of our work with Diverse City, the Greater Toronto Leadership Project. Within the 5 municipalities studied, 49.5% are visible minorities. That's the Statistics Canada definition of anyone non-white or non-Aboriginal. On the other hand, senior leaders across public, private, and nonprofit sectors are 13.5% visible minorities. Among elected officials, the number is marginally better at 15.4%. So School for Civics is part of Diverse City, which aims to change the leadership landscape in the region. The project recognizes society wins when senior leadership reflects the region's diverse population. Economic and social prosperity can be fueled with the talent, networks, and knowledge of an increasingly diverse people. So what's our good idea? As a foundation, we would identify, recruit, train, and connect diverse leaders. We would offer a nonpartisan training program and mentoring program delivered by campaign experts from across the political spectrum. Our goal was to help emerging leaders build political power beyond one single election campaign. So don't run, don't participate just once, burn out and fade away. We wanted to make lifers out of program participants. The curriculum was built on 3 key components. The first 2 are for broader leadership development. Number 1, identify your political values. Number 2, plan for the short and long term to make an impact. And the third is more specific to elections. Learn practical campaign tools such as fundraising, communications, identifying, and getting out the vote. The program was delivered in workshops, but we also offered online learning via webinars with phone seminars and networking opportunities where participants learn from each other. The frequency of training events varied from monthly to bi-weekly, but there was a consistent contact in between meetings with the program. Our program is aimed at the Greater Toronto region. We have an extensive network of leaders and organizations that support our outreach. Participants are selected based on, number 1, demonstrated record of volunteering and social change leadership. Number 2, a capacity to learn in a multi-partisan environment and a commitment to use the lessons in real-life elections. The majority of people we selected had volunteered previously on election campaigns, but they still lacked knowledge of the inner workings. They hadn't been allowed behind the scenes. And they lacked, what's more, the political networks to play more meaningful and significant roles. We've had a broad spectrum of participants, including a gender balance and a good range in ages. This is also true in terms of race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, and regional representation. The program has never been aimed at one specific group. And so what have been our challenges? Well, first of all, systemic. The political system, it's still very difficult to defeat an incumbent. Training doesn't happen in isolation from the real world, where election rules can sometimes favor those in power. There's a lack of networks. Political outsiders have to work twice as hard to tap networks of donors and volunteers, especially if they were born outside the country. On the practical side, every participant is at a different level and therefore requires different training. There are various stages, really, on a leadership journey. The only way to provide meaningful support is to stay connected well beyond the life of the training program. On the other hand, there's curriculum design. We had to experiment and reboot in order to ensure the workshops were sufficiently participatory, with hands-on exercises, so that people could walk away with really tangible tools. So we added online learning later, recognizing that often the busiest people are the most promising political actors. So what did we actually achieve? Starting in 2008, we've trained 100 leaders. More than 90% of the graduates have participated in some capacity in an election campaign. And some indicators from the November 2010 municipal election have been 14 candidates from our network filed to run for city council or school board. 2 graduates served as senior policy advisors to a mayoral candidate. All 20 graduates of the 2010 program worked on municipal campaigns. And in terms of wins, well, one did get elected school trustee, but many more of our graduates contributed to winning city council campaigns. And what they've told us about the value of the program is that they felt better prepared. They understood what was happening in the campaign. They gained new networks. They found support among their peers. And they feel part of a political family, albeit not a partisan one. And like most political activists, they've faced more defeat than victory, and yet they continue to pursue social change through the political process. And we've helped to change the conversation. The program contributed to a heightened awareness of the lack of diversity in elected office, particularly in relation to the municipal election. It also may have raised expectations within the community about change by showcasing new candidates and leaders prepared to stand for elected office. In part, this happened because of extensive print and electronic media attention. Both the program and this diversity gap have been referenced in election-related stories. Articles with titles like Visible Minority Candidates Running for Toronto Trustee Seats and Diverse Candidates Running Strong. And our candidates garnered many media endorsements and were listed as new faces to watch. And behind the scenes, we were helping. We used our own networks to connect new faces with reporters looking for stories. Finally, the increased profile has generated interest among the political parties and the people we are training. And now to some program insights. Someone with political experience is needed to run the program. This person will have a broad political network that crosses party lines. You need to provide trainers with tools. They may have strategic, fundraising, communications, or other expertise, but they may not be teachers. So equip them with interactive exercises and other learning tools. Invest in success. Especially with limited resources, it makes sense to invest more, that support, time, opportunities, in people who will truly benefit. In practical terms, build coaching into the program and offer it to the most committed participants. Match them with mentors when they're really able to use the advice. Mentors and coaches, like trainers, are people with a multi-partisan spirit and with the experience to bring practical lessons from the field. Define success broadly. Not everyone can get elected or even run, but everyone can participate. So train not only candidates, but people who will employ their skills in other campaign roles. It's also important to tell the story of the program's success through the stories of the leaders you train. And underpinning all of this is a network. Maintain a network and be deliberate about connecting people not just with each other, but also with people in positions of power and influence. That could be an elected official or a well-connected activist behind the scenes. Partner, however informally, with other organizations working to promote political leadership and participation of other underrepresented groups. In our case, that's been deliberately working with organizations that are trying to accelerate the political leadership of women. And so, with these informal or formal partnerships, share your knowledge broadly. The curriculum you develop, the contacts, the trainers. When there are more organizations committed to this work and carrying it out, we amplify our impact. The more, the better. The program may end, but the political journey is just beginning. So remain connected to the people you've trained. The success of the leaders and their social impact, the impact in the community, could be months or years in the making. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra, for sharing your experiences at School for Civics with us. Thank you. And some invaluable lessons on preparing new leaders for the challenges of political life, not least of which is the leadership network that you've created, which contributes to build influence and connection beyond the School for Civics classroom. Now we're going to turn to our second presenter. Please join me in welcoming Eva Malona. Eva is the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition in Boston, and she joins us now. Welcome, Eva.
Thank you so much, Kim, and thank you to Cities of Migration and Maitri Foundation for your leadership on these issues and also for the opportunity to share the Boston experience. Allow me to very briefly introduce MIRA, the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. It's the largest immigrant advocacy institution in New England that represents the foreign-born. Our mission is to promote and enhance the immigrant and refugee rights, promote citizenship, civic engagement, and build power among immigrant communities. So in just a quick overview on the setting, in Massachusetts, the immigrant population makes up 14%, which makes our state the 7th largest immigrant population in the nation. And the population is economically and ethnically very diverse. Only in the city of Boston, there are over 140 languages spoken. The foreign-born population in the city of Boston makes up 28%, and 17% of the workforce statewide. Over half of the Massachusetts PhDs are foreign-born. Half of that population is in management, and about 13% of registered voters are new American voters, naturalized citizens, and also U.S.-born children of recent immigrants. Tim, would you like to address the poll, or you want to?
We've got a very quick poll, which we invite our audience to participate in. Does your organization have solid ethnic media relations, is the poll. Please indicate yes or no, and we will present the results momentarily. I'll give you another 15 seconds. Bit of a race here. About 21 people have polled so far. Let's get a few more into the mix. That's great. Got about 26 now. And we will give you a few more minutes, and then we will publish that poll. Ava, while we're publishing the poll, we'll
This is great. I'm just looking at some of the results and, the connection. But one of our great successes and one, thing that needs to be replicated and looked at is building relationship with the ethnic media. Having solid relationship with the ethnic media really helps a lot, keeping your profile and making sure that your mission and your power is understood. Here in our area, we have about 120 ethnic media outlets, and it's extremely important that those connections with the ethnic media, building a strong database, help strengthening your work. So the goal is, the goal for us was to register new Americans and really make a difference and show the world that the foreign-born can really make a difference. We built relationships with the federal government, who is in charge of the citizenship ceremonies, and we got ahead of time a list of the big swearing-in ceremonies across the state of Massachusetts, thousands of people being naturalized at one ceremony. So that gave us the opportunity to plan ahead, to plan volunteers, to get targets in specific areas, and engaged more than 75 volunteers. We followed up with phone calls and postcards to get out the vote, and contacted voters that we had saved from a 2009 drive. And in total, with direct mail, we contacted 8,000 new Americans. And it was extremely important to, make this known to the media. We bought a database of 100,000 voters in the Metro West, which is an area here in Massachusetts, a zone that it's really known for anti-immigrant sentiment. And it was extremely strategic of us to, invest and look in that particular area. We used the voter activation network that we bought the database, and we used the database to place over 5,000 calls to identify who the immigrant voters or who the pro-immigrant voters are in that area. We did follow up with postcards before the election, and then we knocked on almost 700 doors. Another strategy that we used to build political power and build power among the immigrant community is we register another entity, another institution as a sister to MIRA, as the political arm to MIRA, called the Coalition for New Americans. And I know European laws are different, but here we are allowed to, through a 501c3 work, which is MIRA, and that allows us to do limited advocacy work, but it's nonpartisan work. And the 501c4 is an entity that allows us to do more advocacy, political work, endorse political candidates, and engage the community, engage specific areas and specific voters by educating them and endorsing candidates and having them vote for that candidate. So everything that we couldn't do as MIRA because of the nonpartisan status, we used the 501c4, the other entity, to reach out and get more voters to vote for, more progressive and those who really would represent their best interests. Another strategy that really worked, as I mentioned, was, the media strategy, and specifically the ethnic media. We have about 120 outlets. We developed relationship over the years with ethnic media and really kept them very connected, providing stories. You're more likely to go to a party with a buzz. So, the ethnic media is more likely to publish a story when you have a specific area with voters, and specifically new Americans and foreign-born who can really make a difference. We prepared press releases in English, but the best thing was that the interviews, we had identified spokespeople who gave the interviews in their own language, and that was something that the ethnic media really liked and promoted. The second, we send releases to all the media, the mainstream media, but the goal was to really provide the ethnic media. And our governor, who was a candidate for governor for re-election at the time that we were very involved in the civic engagement work, he understood that role, and he also did a lot of briefing with the ethnic media. So he recognized the power of the immigrant vote in the Commonwealth. So in terms of the media strategy, in addition to, furnishing them with stories, finding the people to speak in their own language, we also identified the issues and educated voters and prepared a voter guide so people can understand that really they need to participate in the process, because these are issues that really affecting them, starting from healthcare crisis to education to domestic violence issues and more. And, we designed a campaign from September to October, where before the election, we send regular press releases detailing voter registration drive, MIRA staff and members conducted radio interviews. We were constantly in the Spanish and Portuguese and Haitian Creole media, and those are the largest immigrant population and voters in Massachusetts. We also sent ethnic media a number of PSAs, both pre-recorded and, public announcement, public service announcement, and the day of the elections also we mobilized the whole membership to get people to the polls. So not only, registering them, but making sure that there was transportation and there were in translation services. So we really taking people to the polls and making sure that they will vote the day of the election. And the outcome and the impact of our work is the Governor Patrick, who is the pro-immigrant governor, got elected, and in 10 cities with the largest immigrant population, and he came to a MIRA event right after the elections when he thanked the immigrant community, and he was very well recognized that the immigrant vote really made a big difference in immigrant cities. Another success, another impact is that all the progressive Massachusetts delegation returned to Washington, D.C. to represent the state. In the only seat that, it was a very close race, and there was an individual who was very anti-immigrant and with a very strong anti-immigrant and harsh agenda. He lost with with significant losses in those districts who were very heavy populated by immigrants. And it was interesting because a year ago, another anti-immigrant individual won in that particular area. And then, a year after, an anti-immigrant lost. So that really showed the strength and of the immigrant vote and the new Americans who went out to vote. And also, the legislature is very progressive in Massachusetts, and it's controlled by Democrats, both chambers. Just to wrap up a few key things to remember for success that people can think about or replicate or adopt in their programs is A, build a strong ethnic media contact over time, a very strong database, utilizing your members, utilizing your friends, utilizing your networks for connections, for compelling stories, for celebrities or other successful stories. Second, found members and allies to reach out in different languages, and specifically in those languages and areas that there is a large immigrant population, and specifically new Americans. It was very important to make use of the naturalization ceremonies, have the map of the ceremonies ahead of time, the regions that the ceremonies were taking place, get photo ops, get stories, excite the media for the large numbers of people, and compelling stories of those who were in the armed forces, those successful academics, or those who had made a difference in different areas. And the last one I will mention is work ahead of time and think about long-term, all the bases, all the numbers and the networks that you have, all the systems, utilize those and build a very strong database of voters. I think there is really key. In every conversation that we have with members of legislatures or policymakers, the one thing that they ask about is, how many voters are in my district and what is their voice. And I would like to thank you for your attention and thank you for the opportunity to share some of our experience.
Thank you, Eva, for that excellent presentation about just how effectively a local campaign can take off when smart strategies and coordinated action are put to use. We're going to have another poll in a moment, so while we're setting up, I'll just just want to comment about how one of the great things about both these stories is about how exportable both of them are. I mean, a lot of the curriculum and leadership network that School for Civics developed works hand in hand with local interests and local opportunities for political engagement that's eminently exportable. And I know that a lot of the work that Mira did was catalyzed out of some work that they did in a town called New Bedford, 50 miles south of Boston, which is a good example of this constellation of new industrial gateway cities that are welcoming new immigrants all over North America and Europe. And that story catalyzed action, reached all the way up to the governor's office. Mira is still using some of those smart media strategies that began there. So we can see how local action, like local practice, can really influence that larger policy agenda. So here we go. We've got a poll online. We'd like all of you to participate. And the question here is, in your opinion, what is the best strategy for promoting political participation and diverse leadership? We've given you 5 options: registering voters and getting out the vote, training strong political candidates, engaging media, community outreach, and knowledge of issues. The polling is completely voluntary and also confidential. It only takes a moment to register your vote. So let's see those results coming in. And we're going to give you about 10 more seconds before we post the results. That looks great. How about we broadcast those results now? So we see here that the top category was community outreach. Our audience felt that community outreach was the most important strategy for promoting political participation and diverse leadership, followed closely by registering voters and getting out the vote. Alejandra, you've had a lot of experience in the political arena, from community organizing to campaign work to running as a candidate for elected office yourself. So maybe you'd like to start the Q&A session by commenting on the poll results and telling us how your work at School for Civics may have changed your ideas about the path to successful and effective leadership. And please, to the audience, please let those questions continue coming in, and we'll be getting to your questions momentarily.
Well, in relation to the poll, first of all, it's very consistent with the way that we've built our curriculum. Getting out the vote and the community outreach piece are central. Without a network of people, without a base of support, without a long record of experience and commitment in the community and profile, it's very difficult to be an effective political actor. And in terms of training people and the leadership path that goes beyond just to be having your name on the ballot, but the lifelong commitment to doing it through elections, whether it's whether your name is on the ballot or whether you're supporting a candidate, I'd say that any kind of leader might consider, first of all, to start defining your values, like who are you, what's the change you want to make, then go on to creating a plan of action. It can be changed and adapted, but without writing things down, it's very difficult to make goals come to life and maximizing impact and developing a story as a leader, never wasting an opportunity to tell others why this issue, and always making a call to action, whether that's in a conversation or making a speech, and delivering on promises. Be where you said you were going to be, and do what you said you were going to do, and finally taking chances and being courageous. I think the more you fail, the more you learn, and each time you take on a challenge or a risk, you become stronger, and that's how we've infused all of our curriculum with those elements.
Great, thanks, Alejandra. How about you, Ava? How did the poll results map to your experience engaging?
They're consistent with our strategy, reaching out to the community, educating them about the issues, identifying what I would call the prime mover strategy, so those leaders within the community who would drive the force and get people to get engaged on the issues. It's key. And, following by voter registration. So you do the education, you reach out to the community, you identify what I call the prime mover, strategies, the voices on the ethnic media, and then you get to the large numbers of registered voters, and then you move on into making sure that those registered voters really show to the polls and develop a plan and a strategy and a follow-up to make it happen. So I think it's consistent with the overall strategy of how to best engage the community into the civic participation life.
Great. Thank you, Ava. That was great. We're now going to open up the questions to our audience. The first question we're taking this morning is from Joe O'Brien, who asks, he says, I'm exploring programs where migrants have shadowed elected representatives with the view to encouraging engagement, participation, and eventually migrants running for elected office. What are the lessons learned from such programs globally? Or your comments, please. And maybe, Alejandra, that sounds like School for Civics. So.
I think it's, essentially also Mira's work, but I would say that you need to start by demystifying the process and certainly matching the potential leader or the emerging leader with a mentor. It's a really powerful thing. It helps you to map the political allies that might be out in the community. Within each political party, there's going to be a champion who gets it, who understands that electoral processes are enriched when diverse people can stand for office with enough tools that they can be competitive, because it can be very disempowering and discouraging to have excellent candidates come forward but be essentially set up for failure because they don't really understand what's going on behind the scenes. They don't have the political network to be successful, to do the fundraising, and to really manage the campaign. And so that using the process from being a community and a social change leader into being a political and electable person is something that it takes a long time, and it makes sense to build it incrementally. And certainly, I think Mira would have comments on that.
Yeah, Ava.
To work on that and encourage that, as one model I wanted to share is that a couple of years ago we instituted what we call the Democracy School, and we gather community leaders from across the state and train them to better become leaders in the community, and also reach out to a larger population and be the captains of democracy by encouraging them to learn more and also consider the possibility of running for office and making a difference. And the Democracy School has been really very successful. We engage over 60 to 65 leaders across the state, and we do this every year to give them the tools to be best organizer, to be best spokesperson, to understand the issue, to be known in the community with the potential of running for public office. We have in the city of Boston, we have a couple of city councilors who are foreign-born. In the legislature, we have a few of those, and we get them to be, the spokespeople or to be the examples and the models to encourage more participation, that this can happen, for the foreign-born as well. And as we, work on the Democracy School and we prepare these leaders and these captains for the future, we also are doing work on the 501c4, the entity that I mentioned that we do political work to encourage foreign-born, successful foreign-born in particular, to run for office and making those compelling stories really appealing to the mainstream.
And just what you said about Democracy School does make me think about how we've made this political training for candidates and for campaign workers a piece of a larger puzzle. First of all, the Civics 101, the how do governments make decisions, how does the system actually work, and making that less opaque for people is a really important piece. And secondly, identifying for people the opportunities to develop their profile within the community. One example of a piece of diversity would be connecting emerging leaders to boards of directors in nonprofits or public agencies, so that people can, very quickly demonstrate their value to the community and their potential as political leaders.
That's a great point. And one quick addition to that, Massachusetts also is one of the few states actually in the country who has an integration agenda, or called the New Americans Agenda. And part of that, the recommendation for the administration to look into, is to engage as many foreign-born on board of directors and in leadership positions, and also within the administration as well, just to make that point. And, we are in a process of implementing that and advocating that, foreign-born is more represented in high places and in places that decisions are being made. And what I would like to see, and then for us to focus, is also with an importance and with a focus on women. Immigrant women, just encouraging that segment of the population also to targeting them and encouraging them also to be a driving force to run for office.
Very good, thank you. We're going to take on the next question from Daniel Biru. Daniel comments, most immigrants, many immigrants come from backgrounds of what he calls sick politics, from their home country, and when they reach here, they can be reluctant to become involved in politics. So he asks, how do you approach the cynical potential voter, for example, and what are some recommended approaches for dealing with that situation? And maybe we'll start again with you, Eva.
Sure. We see that all the time, and especially that population that comes from the Eastern European countries or authoritarian regimes who feel really intimidated by the government, and it takes education, it takes a lot of outreach, and it takes a lot of effort to reach out to them and encourage them to become citizens, and then on the spot to register and become a voter and participate. And we do a lot of training across the state and reach out to our population to educate them and encourage them about participation. It's important that we educate them about our political system and how it works, and why is it important for them and their kids and for their future to become participants in the society and be civically engaged. So the continue education and outreach and training about the system and the importance of getting engaged are 4 points that we focus on regular basis. And also the story that we shared, that the governor won on those particular areas, we made sure, to comment later on after the elections, because the other candidate had a very anti-immigrant agenda that was going to be really problematic for many people. So by publicizing that, educating them that you as new voters, you as new Americans really made a difference, and you really contributed in the election of someone who is going to represent your interests to the best. There were statements very clear by the other candidates saying that as soon as I take office, I will focus on the citizens of the Commonwealth, leaving aside all the legal immigrants and other residents in Massachusetts. So we did intensive education and outreach in those areas with immigrant voters to educate them and make sure that they understood it was important to them to register and to vote, because there was their future and their children's future was at stake.
And also, just to add that politics is a journey, right? It's a journey of becoming a fully participating citizen. It could start at the local level with participating in the school or in a neighborhood organization, and I think that trust is built through collective action, and especially when there are small successes, and that that's all part of the political process as well.
Thank you. We've got another question, this time Dr. Fidele Mutwazibo, who I believe is coming in from Dublin, has a question for Alejandra. He asks, are you aware of a shadowing scheme whereby members of the ethnic minorities shadow an elected politician and then learn about the political system in order to make up their minds about whether they're interested in getting into politics? There's a got-to-know scheme in the UK, for example, he references, but he asks you.
No, I wasn't aware of it, and thank you very much for bringing it up. We do call upon elected officials to speak to our group, to act as guest speakers, and to open up opportunities. But it is a really important piece for developing leadership. So thank you very much.
How about you, Eva? Have you done any work encouraging shadowing schemes?
We haven't, heard anything. We of course, as part of our training, we make sure that there is an understanding that might happen, but we haven't had any experience in, with such scenario. I mean, there are, during the campaigns, there's a lot of rhetoric and, a lot of misinformation and confusion about, certain things and certain people being misrepresented, but we haven't really seen any schemes of this sort.
This is Frank from MIRA as well. This is actually something I think we could learn from European organizations which have used maybe shadowing to try to encourage further involvement from diverse communities. It's not something we've done very much here in Massachusetts.
Great. Well, there's a lesson then for us to follow up on. Our next question is from Monica Ann Brennan. Monica's here in Toronto, but recently of Dublin again. She says, Alejandra made the point that her programs are nonpartisan. This could be vital to involving community groups and ensuring you involve potential leaders who have not yet identified their political alliances with a party, as well as efforts in highlighting cross-party issues and responses for immigrant candidates. Do you find the nonpartisan approach still gets party involvement and commitment to the program by political parties and participants? Alejandra?
Actually, it's a great question. And I think that this multi-partisan approach has had unintended positive consequences. Number one, a recognition from the parties that they need to do more, so that they've started to identify more specifically how it is that they encourage diverse candidates to participate, how they recruit them, how they reach out to new communities. It's not just something that's added on at the end. Secondly, I think that among the program participants, there's a sense of multipartisanship that's developed in recognition that the political spectrum isn't really that broad in our context, and in fact that they have many things in common just from their experience of being from underrepresented communities or from immigrant communities. And so they've been able to help each other in ways that cross party lines often. So, in fact, we are beefing up, as it were, the capacity of leaders from communities that haven't had as much of an impact to collectively start to seek solutions around issues that impact them more specifically. And then that's been something that we didn't set out to do, but it's something that's been a byproduct of this work.
Eva, how about you on nonpartisan?
Unfortunately, here in the U.S. and specifically in the last few years, I mean, it's very clear division between the parties, and specifically on the immigration issue, it's clear division that this is, this is an issue that has the support of the Progressive and the Democratic Party more than it does on the Republican Party. And the issue of health care, and I'm sure for those of you who followed, it's a clear division between, the two parties. So it's hard, I mean, to make the argument that it's, it would work if you go with, with that message.
That being said, this is again Frank. We've done quite a bit of work with. Eva has done a lot of work talking to Republican donors and to Republican elected officials, and we once did quite a bit of work across party lines, but things here have gotten so bifurcated in the last couple years.
It's a challenge.
Very challenging. I mean, under previous administration, Massachusetts is really an interesting state. It's a blue state. The majority of the legislature is Democrats, but for 16 years in the corner office, there was a Republican governor. So, working, and we do bipartisan work. We work with both parties, and we have donors and friends and allies from both parties. But you can see how clear the division is on the issues and on the stand, when they stand, on issues, specifically when it comes to immigration, including the health care, including education, including even citizenship at times. But that's one of the issues that we can really build on and get support. But it has been really interesting, to work with a Democratic legislator and a Republican governor who had veto power and all of that. But we've been successful over the years. In the last 12 years we got things done and legislation that Mira takes a lot of credit in passing that, it was done in a bipartisan way. But it's really difficult, and it's a challenge in the current times.
Okay, we've got one more question, and a couple more questions, but a bit of a different direction. Laura McDonough, who's with the United Way here in Toronto, is interested in strategies for engaging immigrant youth in the political process and how these strategies might be different from targeting immigrants. And Alejandra, do you want to comment?
Well, we've never specifically sought out to train youth, but we always accepted young leaders in our program when they showed a lot of promise and commitment in order to get that sort of age balance like we seek to do with gender balance in the program. The other thing is that the people that we're training do become role models within their community. When they run or they are very active in a campaign, they tend to attract people from their own community. This is very much true in the case of one of our leaders, Khadija Ali, who had literally hundreds of Somali youth working on her campaign, and something that hasn't been seen, I think, before in our city. The final thing I'd say about this is that once we train leaders, we deploy them. We've provided them some tools around understanding the process and helping other people to understand it in turn. So, whether it's a young Tamil person, a young Filipino person, sending them out into the community and really engaging other people and transferring some of that knowledge, they really do send a signal about the possibilities for getting more involved.
Great, Alejandra. Eva, do you have a comment on recruiting using youth or strategies for engaging youth in particular?
Yes, we have been working with youth for at least the last 5 years, especially in the East Boston area when we started a more organizing work with a specific outreach to youth. And Mira gave birth to the student immigrant movement, which is made of students who are fighting for their rights and were very, very engaged in the civic process 5 years ago when the first time the progressive governor was running for office. And they have done an outstanding work, doing the door-to-door canvassing and then, distributing postcards and mails and the T-shirts with, this is youth and we're reaching out to you. And what's interesting is that not only, immigrant and refugee youth, but also undocumented youth who do not really vote, but they, participated, reaching out to their networks, to their parents and others, who were voters. So even the undocumented youth worked with documented youth and other voters to produce, large number of participation of new immigrants. And we also used the social media, the Facebook, Twitter, and speaking to high schools. We did a lot of, presentations. We have youth on staff that does those regular presentations in high schools to keep engaging and expanding the network of students in the civic engagement. And I believe at this point there are thousands of people part of that movement who are working on, legislative campaigns and constantly being the engagers of the young people and those who they can reach out to.
That's great. Alejandra has a question for you, Eva.
So actually, I have a question for all of the webinar participants.
Okay.
I see a couple of comments around making the program and the curriculum available. And in fact, we are going to develop a checklist and some tips for others who might be interested in developing a similar program to School for Civics. So it would be really helpful if any of you would be willing to let me know what would be useful in that checklist. What would you want to know? What would be useful in terms of making this more, like Kim said, transferable and transportable, and maybe we can learn from each other.
That's great. And you know what? We'll make sure that question goes into the email we send out to all our registrants after the event. Thank you very much. That's a great idea. I've got another question from Dr. Fidele Mutwasibo. He asks, would it make sense to campaign for extending voting rights to all the residents, including the migrants, in local or municipal elections? In Ireland, anyone can vote and stand in local or what we call municipal elections. That isn't the case here, so I'm going to ask Alejandra to comment.
Well, certainly for Maytree Foundation believes that would be a good idea because of the fact that there are 200,000 people permanently in our city who are living here but unable to vote, even though we have a very quick path to naturalization. It's wasted time in which full participation isn't encouraged, and certainly if it takes a long time, it's a generation of youth that can grow up without seeing their parents participating at the ballot box. And good habits are learned early, and getting out to vote is a good habit for anyone making a home here.
That's great, thanks. How about you, Eva? What comments do you have about extending voting rights to?
MIRA has supported legislation that has been considered a number of times in the legislature to give people the power of vote in the local elections. Unfortunately, the legislation hasn't gone very far. It's an emotional issue for many. But localities, for example, in Cambridge, they passed a resolution that really allows, green card holders, those who are not citizens, to participate, but not the undocumented. And also it's being considered now in another area in Brookline, which is very close to Boston. So we have supported that, the participation in the local election. I think it contributes to the civic engagement and to everybody being involved and encouraged to make a difference and make the Commonwealth a better place for everyone. But unfortunately, as I said, at the state level, the legislation hasn't gone very far. Recently, when the hearing was taking place, there were some very emotional speeches to people saying that, this is just a privilege of citizens and it should not be expanded. But we have been very vocal about the fact that we do support that.
And certainly I think that allowing migrants or immigrants to vote in local elections is a good idea that has traveled around the world, and it's made a tremendous impact, I think, in our city. But we're learning from the campaigns in North America and watching what's happening in Europe and elsewhere.
Where cities like Dublin are actually are leading the way, so that's great. I've got another question, this time from Evelyn Sue, who comments that Frank Sherry of America's Voice, well-known communications strategist in the U.S., he talks about the importance of converting what he calls the undecided middle. So I want to ask both Alejandra and Mira, what is the most important thing we can do to make that change? We'll start with you, Eva. How do you convert the unconverted middle, decided middle?
That is a great question. I mean, speaking about the undecided middle and, on the issue of immigration, that is a very personal and very emotional issue for many. So I think the way you craft the message, reaching out to them, to make them understand and make them believe that this is to their benefit, so they can see America's leadership, in the global world. They can see that their participation and their support for immigration is really to the benefit of the next generation, and it's to the economic benefit of our country. And we talk about that. I mean, here in Massachusetts, we use the demographics. We use the successes of immigrants to reach out to the undecided middle so they can see their assets and they can only contribute. And, for example, Massachusetts would have lost population if it wasn't for newcomers. But I think, not to repeat myself, but if they see that this is, to their benefits, to the future of their children's benefit, and they don't see immigrants as a threat, but they see them as a key to inclusion and to the future of America, I think that would be something that would resonate and make them support, a progressive and a just and humane policy for equality and equal treatment.
Great. How about you, Alejandra?
Well, I'd say that in our city region, diversity is valued. So the diverse population, and our diversity is very diverse because people come from all over the world. But beyond that, we need to continually talk about how this can accelerate our regional prosperity, that's economically and socially, and that diverse leadership and changing, the landscape of who's making decisions is an important part of that. That it can lead, there's new markets, there's innovation, there's enriched decision making, and also that it's important to see yourself reflected in who's making decisions on your behalf. So I think that's a continuing conversation and a challenge.
That's right. And we have a comment here from one of our audience members, Kadishu, who says, I think issues of employment, inclusiveness, and infrastructure development are issues that really engage immigrants in local politics. And in fact, so I guess this really speaks to part of the agenda here, which is to get ideas about immigrant integration out of the siloed settlement box and into the mainstream where really important issues need to be decided. We have another question for both Eva and Alejandra. We're coming to the end of our session. What about social media? How is social media helping advance Mira's interests or a School for Civics? How important are some of the new media to your communication strategies?
Well, certainly something that we talk about in terms of training the political activists in our program. But it's another platform for a conversation. It's not something that can replace real organizing, getting on the phone, getting to a door to talk to people. It's just another tool that people can use. You wouldn't want to discount the telephone or email. You would never discount social media. On the other hand, it's very affordable, so it's created a space for new people and new constituencies to have a conversation and to engage. So, yes, certainly an important piece going forward.
Great. How about you, Eva? And Frank, how does social media play at Mira?
I totally agree. I mean, that's the future of communications, to reach out to a larger audience. We started emphasizing that in the last couple of years, hundreds of Facebook followers that we see on our issues, the Mira blog, keeping that up to date. So we see that as a huge tool for organizing online and for reaching out to constituents that are not maybe familiar with the issues that we stand for. So that's extremely important to develop and keep up with.
I'm going to publish one last comment from an audience member. Wayne Smith comments that a multi-partisan approach is necessary for issues that cross party lines. The problem is that issues need political champions. In particular, it's difficult to get the media to pay attention to non-political actors. And maybe, Alejandra, would you like to comment on that one?
Yeah, and I think that this is an enormous opportunity for the people that we're training and the leaders that we're helping to develop because they are new voices. They're bringing a fresh perspective. In a sense, the media is hungry for that. A good example is always somebody who's making a real impact in the community that they haven't heard from before. And certainly in a 24-hour news cycle, there needs to be a plurality of voices or it gets really stale quickly. And that's a great point of entry for the new leadership.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And Eva, a quick comment on that one from you?
I totally agree. And, just having unusual suspects be the voice on the issues, I think it's extremely important. One of the reasons why immigration reform failed in the U.S., even though it was close to passing, with the best administration and support in both chambers, is because, we really failed to get other voices to be, to speaking on the issue, getting labor more involved, getting business and other unusual suspects to be the voices for getting, for passing legislation or talking to issues that would help both parties and will help us as a society.
Very good. So we're really at the end of our Q&A now. Thank you very much, both Eva and Alejandra. We're going to close by asking you two final, very short questions. We're looking for a very quick response to both of these. One of them, the first of two questions is, here at Cities of Migration, we like to say, good ideas travel. So can you give us an example of where your work has been replicated or adapted or where it should be? And we'll start with you, Eva.
Thanks, Kim. You mentioned earlier our New Bedford experience, and for those who may not be familiar with, there was a significant raid that really impacted over 350 families in New Bedford, Massachusetts. And we developed a media strategy. We developed a statewide coordination that became a model for the country. When other raids happened in Iowa and other parts of the country, they used the MIRA model, working with the media, coordinating state and NGO responses. So that's one of the models that was replicated across the country. And the second, I will briefly mention our executive order on immigrant integration that also was after Massachusetts, we saw that in Maryland and Washington states, and it's really a model that we also talked about at the National Integration Conference, and we hope that there will be spread in other parts of New England as well. But developing a strategy at the state level for immigrant integration, it's also another successful model that can be developed and adopted.
A beautiful strategy that's been very good.
So from New Bedford to integration, you fail at the federal level, but then you have a model at the local level, and then the voices carry from New Bedford raised and a good model to an integration statewide model.
How about you, Alejandra? Yours is a young project.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been replicated, or where should it be?
Well, certainly immigrants in Canada go to cities large and small, so there has been interest from other cities. We've had inquiries from, for example, Vancouver and Calgary, et cetera, and this has given us an opportunity to start to really document and put it in a box and send it away to other communities.
Oh, that's great. Very good. And here's the final question. This is a 5-second answer. What's next? What's next for you, Alejandra? Where are you taking your work next?
Well, we developed our program on an election cycle, which is now concluded. We have 100 people trained, and we'll continue to support them within our network. But also we're going deeper. We're going into neighborhoods and feeding the pipeline of leadership by looking for new leaders, training them on how governments work, and so we hope to expand the audience where we are.
Excellent. How about you, Eva? Very briefly, what's next on your horizon?
So implementing the New Americans agenda and promoting citizenship for people of all ages, and engaging other states across the country in the federally driven policy to increase the number of citizens and replicating executive orders across New England.
Bravo. A great agenda. Well, that's it. Thank you. Our time has run out.